One Joe Watson here, a mediocre astrologer. Meh, he's okay. Guys, today I want to look at the astrology of spirituality. I've been into spirituality for a long time. I mean, I was kind of raised into it. My mother was very active in this spiritual community, having spent time in different non-denominational. I mean, I wasn't brought up religious. Um, Parents raised me macrobiotic, but my mom studied Taoism, Native American wisdom, Zen Buddhism, and I took an early interest in all of that stuff too. I remember as a teenager reading the Tao Te Ching, and other spiritual books. I mean, I kind of grew up with that flavor, right? So I've taken an active interest in spirituality, and around 27, I kind of had a crisis early on, being eighth house and scorpionic. And I went traveling, not knowing what I would find out west, and that's where I met my teachers, my spiritual teacher Vanessa Stone, who's an incredible woman, just a little bit older than me, about a year. She's still active. She was in Austin, Texas at that time. Then she moved to Hawaii, and she has an active farm community out there. Done tremendously well for herself, bringing people together, helping people, very awake, aware, spiritually enlightened being. So yeah, and then since then I've done a lot of spiritual practices, meditation, reading, contemplation, self-inquiry. We even went to a live Adya Shanti talk. But yeah, so I've been pretty active in that whole circle for a long time now. And I've had my own spiritual awakenings, a major one in 2012. But anyway, let's get into it. Guys, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Book a reading with me, macroastrology.com, macrogoldmachine@yahoo.com, my email. All right. Now, it is a little bit difficult to sort of tease out how evolved somebody is in their chart, but what we can see a lot of is the moon, the quality of the moon, the phases of the moon, relation of moon to sun, ascendant lord, sun sign, 9th and 12th house, and their lords, and then the outer planets. They're all going to play a role. All right. So this is Mayor Baba. And he's an Indian guru of Persian descent. He lived a normal school life until the age of 19, where he had a short contact with an old Muslim holy woman. And that marked the beginning of his spiritual awakening. He was hailed as Parvadigar, God is the Almighty Sustainer. Anyway, very awake, very enlightened, and actually he taught through silence. Like, he was silent. I think he did teach for a while speaking, but he took a vow of silence and just went silent. Very interesting man. So Aquarius ascendant, Venus in the first, then Sun and Mercury in Pisces, right? So Pisces is gonna play a strong role in a lot of spiritual people, but not all. And we'll look at that. The moon, sun and moon trine. So when the moon and sun are trine, these are a big part of the personality. The person feels happy, right? So just for comparison, I have my moon square my sun, and so that square plays heavy into my personality. Like, you feel it. Like, I'm a square kind of guy. There's that effort, that aggression, that dissatisfaction. I mean, any harsh aspects to the moon is going to come out as a certain kind of, well, you could say certain dissatisfaction, unhappiness, more irritability, more, kind of like a need to sort of push and work hard. The trine is really easy and smooth, and it feels really nice when people have their sun trine moon. Their personality is very pleasant and easygoing. They're happy. They're happier people generally inside. Now, he's got his moon in Scorpio conjunct Uranus. That's very interesting because, well, I mean, Moon in Scorpio is very intense, right? But then conjunct Uranus, retrograde. Uranus is the planet of awakening, does excellent in Scorpio, and it's conjunct the MC. Exactly. So this shows that he can be, I mean, Uranus has many expressions, energetic expressions. One of them is that of awakening, like a great awakener, right? So in enlightenment, it's Uranus. If there's one planet that represents Satori, nirvana, awakening, enlightenment, it's Uranus, right? That's the planet that represents Satori, nirvana, enlightenment, right? So, the great expansion, the flowering of the mind, right? So that's very prominent for somebody, if it was a less evolved being, this might be a little bit crazy, right? A little too intense, a little too extreme, shocking. It's also the co-rule of the ascendant. But this for somebody who's awake and aware, this is a telltale sign. This is somebody who's definitely, Uranus is going to play a big part in a lot of spiritual masters. You'll see it again and again. Pluto and Neptune are conjunct here. In an inconjunct to Uranus, kind of wide, a little wide, more the moon. You can see the moon in conjunct to Pluto and Neptune. So his moon is I don't want to say it's afflicted, but it's deep, so deep. Probably because his karma is very healthy, very good. In fact, in order to be spiritually enlightenment, you have to have like zero karma, right? And there are varying degrees. I mean, there are subtleties. I'm not going to say every single person on this list is on the same level. There's varying degrees of spirituality, of enlightenment, and I'm not here to say who is the most enlightenment, or who is the most enlightened, or who isn't. But in any case, this guy certainly qualifies. We can see Venus is the ninth lord. It's in the first house. Mars is the third lord in the 12th, exalted in Capricorn, but he chose not to speak, right? So third lord in the 12th, that's very telling of that. It speaks to that point, right? Mars also sextile the moon, so this is dignifying the moon quite well. Really nice sextile there. So that's a really good, strong grounding force for the moon to have that dignity from Mars. Dignified Mars, dignifying it in Scorpio. But yeah, third lord in the 12th definitely can be quiet, for sure, silent. His Saturn is exalted in the 9th house, south node conjunct the 9th house cusp, right? Saturn is the 12th lord in the 9th house. These are all very spiritual indications, right? So yeah, I mean, all of it. It's highly, highly spiritual chart, really. Ascendant lord in the 9th house, ascendant 12th and first lord in the 9th house, exalted, pretty much conjunct the south node. South node also is a spiritual indicator, right? South node conjunct the 9th house shows high level spirituality. So yeah, Venus, Saturn, Uranus. Man, the outer planets look very slow. I'm going to check to see how slow they are. Nodes are direct. Nodes aren't always direct, and I was wondering, like, maybe that's one of the things, like direct nodes. But it's, you see, sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't for these spiritual people. Venus and Saturn, mutual reception. Yeah. And that actually is a trine. That's a really strong one, right? Ninth, first and ninth, first and 12th and ninth, first and ninth. It's hugely indicative of somebody who's very spiritual, very close to God consciousness, that sort of thing, because it's a trine and it's a mutual reception. Right, that's very strong. All right, let's keep going. Ramesh Balsekar. Ramesh Balsekar was, I would say this, he does not seem to me like the highest expression of spirituality or enlightenment, but he was on that path and he was very devoted to it. He was a teacher. He taught non-dualism, Advaita Vedanta. Yeah, again, not the most in line, but certainly up there. Any case, Scorpio rising, water sign, right? South node conjunct the ninth house cusp and Pluto, and then Moon in Cancer conjunct Saturn in Cancer. So Saturn Moon, not great, but for somebody who is a spiritual teacher, that's really going to add a lot of deep internal structure. I mean, yes, it's in Cancer, but Moon is strong in Cancer, right? So it's dignifying this Saturn, first of all. Mars is in Taurus, not great, but this is helping hurting, right? Ascendant Lord in seventh in poor dignity. So this is somebody who helps people or hurts people. So obviously he's a helper. He's a counselor. People come to him and he makes them feel better. He's got Jupiter and Mercury there as well, right? Sun and Venus in Gemini. In fact, his Venus is exactly the same as mine, 11 degrees in the 8th house. So that's interesting. Sun, 7th, moving to the 8th. Okay. Uranus in domicile square Mercury and Jupiter. That's interesting. That's definitely going to be a connection to that planet of awakening and enlightenment. It's a square, so he's gonna have to work for it. Not as easy, not as natural, right? No great relationship between Sun and Moon. And then Moon seems to have a semi-square between Venus and Moon, so somehow his pleasures are not going to deeply nourish his heart. But this right here, South Node conjunct the ninth Lord in the ninth house, 12th in the 8th, 12th Lord in the 8th. I actually have 12th Lord in the 8th. That's all very indicative of spiritual, plus Neptune conjunct ascendant. This could be very very creative, but Neptune also is very, very spiritual, right? Depends on the person, how they're going to express that. This could be very artistic as well. Yeah. But yeah, he's very interested in speaking and teaching other people. And communication, North Node in the 3rd house. And then this Uranus. So let's see what we can gather. Mercury's retro, very slow. Uranus is slow. Oh, Venus, Mercury, neutral reception. Yeah, of course. 7th Lord. I have this exactly. 7th Lord in the 8th, 8th and 7th. And so with 7th Lord in the 8th and 8th, with the mutual reception between 7th and 8th Lord, it shows, well, can show a lot of things. Number one, it can show that this person and myself tends to become intimate with others very quickly, right? Especially if it's a woman, right? It is what it is, right? Also, death is associated with partnership. That did happen to me, meaning that my girlfriend died. And I've seen this in other people's chart that have a similar combination. Jacqueline Onassis Kennedy had that, and her husband died, right? It also shows that 8th house secrets are going to be naturally a part of any sort of relationship. So he's teaching people about the 8th house, and he's bringing people into the 8th house, which is secrets, mysticism, occultism, all right, astrology, deep hidden knowledge and awareness, right? You have to go digging, but then you end up with treasure. 8th house is buried treasure. So if you do like your research digging, then you can come up with real powerful secrets of life. So that's what's happening. He's sharing the 8th house with people, the secret laws of the universe. And I don't know anything about his partnerships, but they could be deep and intense and have themes of death and betrayal or secrecy or hidden relationship affairs, even things like that. All right, let's keep going. Ram Dass, I think, was Richard Alpert. He was a professor, and then he met his teacher Neem Karoli Baba and became a spiritual teacher, basically. All right. He wrote the bestseller Be Here Now. He's well known for his association with Timothy Leary at Harvard University. So he was a Harvard professor, I believe, and then he dropped out. I think because of that, from Timothy Leary, he experimented with acid. Both having been dismissed for professorship for experiments on the effects of psychedelic drugs. He's also known for his travels in India and association with Hindu guru Neem Karoli Baba. All right. He's a Jew. This is funny. You always got to mention that, but anyway, no, it's good to know for whatever reason. North Node conjunct Uranus conjunct Sun, right? Uranus again and again. We'll see Uranus strong in, and he's born almost during an eclipse, right? There would be when so it was just past an eclipse, right? Like a day or two before there would have been an eclipse. Let me just check. Let's see here. Minus 3 days and 19 hours. Yeah. Full moon eclipse. All right. This is very similar to Donald Trump, actually, who has it in Gemini, but he has North Node, Uranus, and Sun, and then full moon lunar eclipse. That's why Donald Trump is Donald Trump. Anyway, I know he's very polarizing, but Ram Dass, very, very powerful as well. Stationary nodes. North Node in Aries in the first. This is huge in the 10th. Huge for career success. Huge. He's got exalted Jupiter in Cancer, conjuncting the ascendant from the 12th, right? So that's a very spiritual placement. Ascending conjunct Pluto, transformation, right? Powerful transformation. As a college professor to a Indian guru, an American guru after Indian lineage. Sorry, and then Mars in the first too, Neptune in the third, and then so exalted Venus in the ninth. Okay, here ninth. So Jupiter, ninth lord, conjuncting the ascendant, right? So this ninth house is very, very strong. We got Venus, which is, so Venus is the 11th, so spiritual community in the 9th, right? And then for early child, like early on, he's going to be interested in, well, college, right? So Harvard University, but then spirituality and philosophy. And then Mercury, it's the 12th lord, that's in the 11th. So again, like spiritual community, right? That both the 12th and the 9th are connected to the 11th, which is community, groups, networks. He was in a community when he was studied with Meher Baba, right? But Pluto, powerful transformation, Jupiter, Uranus, 9th, 12th. So all these things, Saturn, this is excellent, not for spirituality, but just for, in general, for success, for anything, for, having good relationships. Very, it's angular, it's domicile, it's in the 7th house, which Saturn does well with. Venus square moon, that's, and moon's in Sag. Moon is in Sag, so that's also very philosophical. But Venus square moon shows somebody's indulgences that they love, like their sensorial pleasures, are in conflict with what they need to feel emotionally satisfied deep in their heart, for that kind of heartfelt satisfaction. Jupiter has a bit of a square to the nodes, so this is going to play a very prominent role. That's MC and 9th lord. All right, so very Jupiter, very spiritual. 9th, 12th, Uranus, Pluto, even Neptune trine Mercury, right? So the outer planets in general, but with the 9th and 12th, and then Sun to Moon, both in fire signs. So that's trinal relationships. So that's going to create Even though it's not exact, it's still a very healthy relationship between sun and moon. So that's going to create this peace of mind, right? For somebody to be very spiritually enlightened, they need that peace of mind. Let's check this. Nodes are stationed. Sun and Jupiter. No, I'm sorry. It's yeah, Mars and Moon. Sorry. No, I have to cut this out. Hold on. Sorry about that. I got confused for a second. It's Sun and Mars, Jupiter and Moon. So Sun and Mars mutual reception, right? Suns and Mars sign, Mars and the Sun sign. That is well, 10th whole sign house and 10th and second. So speaking as a career, public image, that's true. Jupiter and Moon. 6th Lord, 1st Lord, 6th and 1st. So that's interesting. 6 is very academic, but Sagittarian. So yeah, I mean, that is something that seems quite competitive, but I guess because of the planets involved, it's a lot softer and better. But that actually dignifies, Moon, Jupiter, Sun, Mars. So that's really good. Mars is the 5th Lord. 5th house will also play a very strong role in spirituality. So you will see that again and again. All right, Amma. Amachi, Amma Mata Amritanandamayi Devi. She's the hugging saint. Large woman, but beautiful face, beautiful person, beautiful being. She goes around hugging people. And she's alive, and she runs several organizations. I mean, she's a highly enlightened being. A lot of people don't realize it. They think it's just like this thing. She hugs people. She's actually very, very enlightened. Scorpio rising. And you might wonder, how do I know this? Probably South Node Jupiter. Like, I just have a very, very fine sense about who's authentically spiritually evolved and who isn't. At least according to me. I believe it, and so far I have nothing that could, it seems to fit. So anyway, Scorpio rising, Mars. So here it is. Mars conjunct Venus. Venus is the 7th Lord. Mars the ascendant Lord. So here's her. Here's other people. Conjunct. So hugging, 10th Lord, public image. So she goes, I mean, that's her thing, like in public, hugging people. People line up, she hugs them. That's it. Public, right? Her and other people. It's in Virgo, which is not, I mean, that's interesting, right? Venus is not very good in Virgo. It's debilitated. Mars in Virgo. Not very, I would not consider Mars in Virgo to be a hugging planet sign combination, but I guess when you're that awake, things are a little bit different. Pluto in the 10th in Leo, and then we have the Uranus in the 9th. Widely conjunct South Node. South Node's out of sign in Leo, but there's still that South Node Uranus combination. Moon's ruling in the 9th house. Moon's exalted in Taurus in the 7th. Again, for the hugging quality, that's really strong. Because Moon's in Taurus, Moon's exalted in Taurus. It's at the anaretic degree. It's about to change dignity, but it is still in Taurus, where it's exalted. Moon is care, moon is love, right? So she's hugging people. We see that here, and we see that here, right? Taurus is so, first of all, sensual, but also rich and excessive, and beautiful and luxurious, right? And it's the ninth lord, right? So Venus is also the 12th lord. So her with the 12th lord in Virgo. Okay, so that's, I mean, but then we get a mutual reception, Venus and Mercury. Mercury's in Venus sign, Venus and Mercury sign. So that's adding a lot of dignity to this Venus, even though it's not by degree, it's still by sign. It still applies. You know, I've heard some people say mutual receptions only count if they're by degree. I'm not of the school of astrological theory. I'm of the school of astrological practice and what works in real life. And in real life, I can tell you 100%, 100% that if the degrees don't align, but the signs do, it still works. Why? Because I know I have two mutual receptions. And the one between the 7th and 8th is very much intact, even though the degrees are not there. 7th lord in the 8th, 8th lord in the 7th, it's still a mutual reception. And here we have 11th and 12th lords changing places. And so group community is becoming more spiritual. So spiritual group community. And she leads several organizations, several charitable organizations and whatnot, right? So she's very strong as far as like community, career, being you know, this strong, mature, responsible woman who's also spiritually enlightened and goes around hugging everyone. And then she's got, you know, Mercury, Neptune, and Saturn. Saturn's exalted in Libra. Again, this strong Libra influence where she's hugging people. That's Libra, right? Yeah, Saturn's the 4th, 3rd, and 4th. All right, so homeland, early childhood, North Node in Aquarius. Yeah, communication. And she teaches too, minimally, but I've heard her speaking. She's taught stuff. Neptune, Uranus square. Seems, I don't know, probably not a big deal. Probably good actually, because it connects Neptune and Uranus, so even more spiritualization. And they're both, and then Mars, her ascendant lord, seems to be the midpoint between the square, so that's connecting her, further connecting her with Uranus and Neptune. All right, 8th lord in the 12th, that's considered good. Jupiter in the 8th. Jupiter's in Gemini, but we see very strong, you know, 9th and 12th house activation. So Jupiter in Gemini is it's irrelevant. I mean, it's not going to be a negative. It's not going to harm anything. And then again, and we see a trine. It's actually out of sign, but it's still in pretty good harmony. Sun, moon. Okay. Everything's pretty much direct except for the nodes. And then, yeah, Mercury, Venus, mutual reception. Moon's a little out of bounds. And I wonder if her Mars or ascendant lord being conjunct a planet in poor dignity, Venus, which is in debility, if that is making her large, right? You know, and this is not a criticism, this is just pure investigation, because sometimes you'll see that large people, fat people, obese people, their ascendant lord is in poor dignity. That's one of the things you can see. Not always, but if not, then they're physically weak or they die young. So in any case, that might be a thing here. Let's keep going. Khalil Gibran. Khalil Gibran is, I know he's a poet and an artist and an author, but highly, highly enlightened being, like very, very spiritually evolved. Right? Again, and then Uranus conjunct the MC. is square Jupiter. So then ninth lord conjunct Mars in Capricorn, exalted Mars in the second. Moon and Venus on the ascendant. So for arts, that's very strong. In Sag though, Sagittarius. So very very philosophical. Jupiter, like I said, is in the seventh. So ascendant lord in the seventh shows somebody who, in this case, is going to be a helper. He's a teacher. He's a philosopher, right? And that other Jupiter is in poor dignity, but it's in the seventh house, so he's attracting people to him who are in poor dignity, who need his help, and it's connected to Uranus, so enlightenment, enlightened, aware, awake, aware, right? And then North Node in the 12th house in Scorpio, deep dive in, right? 12th house Scorpio, North Node. Mars, the 12th lord, is exalted in the second, conjunct the sun. Ninth lord, ninth and 12th lords conjunct second house. So for speaking, and then strong Taurus stellium here. South node Neptune, south node Saturn, but south node Neptune as well. And then Pluto is a little further away. But we have south node Neptune as opposed to a lot of times south node Uranus, south node Neptune. Neptune's Uranus is very strong here. And then 12th, 9th and 12th lords connected here in good dignity. Capricorn has a bad rap as far as like being spiritual. Like people are always like, oh, Capricorn means you're going to be materialistic and, you know, worldly and successful. Yes, but it can't even be like as far as like spirituality, because how do we know about these people if they're not famous, right? There are spiritual teachers who just completely go unnoticed, right? So Capricorn is going to help spirituality become worldly, right? So you can definitely have strong Capricorn placements and be very spiritual. You'll just be like a, you know, a spiritual boss, a spiritual CEO, a spiritual, you know, a spiritual leader, right? Somebody who can take spirituality out into the world. Mercury's trine Pluto, that's excellent as well, you know, for expressing, explaining Plutonic things. All right. What's going on here? A lot of retros. Yeah, nothing much. All right. J. Krishnamurti, highly philosophical, enlightened being. Now, I'm not qualifying, you know, how enlightened, like who's going to be more enlightened than others. I get a general sense, but it's like I try to be very careful about that whole thing because it's very difficult to say. In any case, Krishnamurti, excellent teachers, extremely wise, powerful. And then we see a very prominent Uranus here in Scorpio, widely conjunct the MC. Ninth house, though. So ninth house. Saturn is the ascendant lord, along with Uranus, both in the ninth house. 10th whole sign house, but ninth quadrant. Right. And then so Venus is the ninth lord. Venus is in Gemini. That's okay. Jupiter is exalted in Cancer in the fifth house. So for teaching, fifth house also has spiritual implications. It's trying the ninth, it's trying the ninth house, and it deals with spiritual literature and practices, as far as I've been told. But it seems to play a significant role in many spiritual teachers as well. So he has Jupiter in Cancer in the fifth house. So that's a spiritual teacher for sure. Mars in Cancer as well. Not great, but dignified by this Jupiter. Right? He's not a very Martian type person, right? So he's going to probably outsource this, meaning that when we can't embody a planet, we project it outwards. And so Mars in Cancer would mean that here he is, exalted Jupiter in Cancer in the fifth house, and here are these Mars in Cancer people gathered around him. They're in poor dignity, they're stupid, they're ignorant, they're overly passionate, and he's teaching them. So that literally will satisfy this requirement. You sometimes when things don't fit, they're projected outwards. You see this a lot of time. Like if a woman has a very strong Mars, but she's very petite and feminine, she won't represent that Mars. That Mars could be the guys she attracts into her life. And she'll say, I'm always attracting these very aggressive guys. What's going on? Every single time. Well, look at her chart. She'll have a very strong Mars and she won't be able to embody it. All this happens with any planet that you cannot make use of. It projects outward, right? Saturn often for young people is like an older person, a boss, a grandparent, a parent, a teacher, somebody, an authority figure coming down on them, saying no, 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 restricting them. Then as they get older, they can embody it and it's no longer an issue. Okay. North Node in Pisces in the second house. So speaking, spirituality, teaching, Jupiter, second lord in the fifth, Cancer, right? Saturn would be the 12th lord in Scorpio. Scorpio is a water sign. Scorpio is very evolutionary, right? Wants you to evolve and grow. And it pulls no punches, Scorpio. It's by whatever means necessary, right? Death, crisis, whatever, right? Whatever gets it moving, whatever gets your soul growing, that's what Scorpio is all about, right? If you need a punch in the face, Scorpio is more than happy to give it to you. 12th lord in the 9th house. Ninth lord in the 5th house. These are all very spiritually indicative. Pluto and Neptune in Gemini in the 4th. I mean, that's going to be very strong just for general spirituality at home, homeland, from early childhood as well. And Sun conjunct Mercury, that's fine. Moon and Sag in the 11th, right? Very philosophical. Jupiter's and that's a mutual reception. Moon and Jupiter, Jupiter and Moon. That's excellent. And it seems to be opposite Venus. So that's interesting. It shows the kind of relationships that he attracts. So Venus and Gemini types. It's not a bad combination, Moon opposite Venus. I mean, especially if the signs are okay. Here they are. There's no change in dignity for either sign, but there's also that mutual reception between 11th house and 5th house, right? So general education, teaching, spiritual teaching, and community. So yeah, that's interesting. And he was picked by the Anthroposophical or the Theosophical Society. They're a branch of occultism. He was picked at a young age to be the spiritual teacher, the spiritual leader. And he epically, in an epic speech, a beautiful speech, brilliant speech, turned it down when he was of age. So that was very powerful. Also, Uranus is opposite Sun. So that the planet of awakening is connecting to his sun sign. So that's very strong as well. Moon Venus, that's very sweet. Even if it's opposite, it's just very, very sweet, loving, caring, nurturing. It's like candy or something. All right. So he always had very loving relationships, but very awake, very enlightened. Moon's way out of bounds. That's Sag Moon. The very high-minded 11th house Sag Moon. It's extreme. And then Venus and Mars are also out of bounds. So that's interesting. And then Mercury. Oh yeah, Mercury and Venus. I didn't even realize that. Mercury and Venus have the mutual reception exactly by the degree. So that's going to be really strong. So that's 4th and 5th lords. So home and so early on, teacher, right? From childhood, teacher. That's what it was. He was recognized as a child, as a spiritual teacher. Fascinating. 14th Dalai Lama. Now, I don't necessarily think the Dalai Lama is like the most enlightened being. Some people do. I don't. I never heard him say anything like really powerful. He just says like really like kind of like status quo, normal stuff. Doesn't sound very enlightened, but he is the spiritual leader of Tibet, and he was picked through the spiritual tradition, however, as a child. So there is something there. I grant that. So he is a very powerful ascendant with the Sun, South Node, and Pluto. South Node, Pluto, right? So far we've seen South Node Uranus, South Node Neptune, and here South Node Pluto. It shows these outer planets are very spiritual, right? And so if you have South Node conjunct an outer planet, it shows a past that is full of whatever that planet is, and the sign that represent in the sign, house and sign, the planet. That your past is full of that nature. So very plutonic, powerful, right? Transformational. Let's see, Sun is ruling the second and third lord. It's the second and third lord. So Moon conjunct Neptune in Virgo. Neptune is not great in Virgo, but opposite Saturn, they're both going to be very, especially Neptune is really going to dignify this Saturn. Saturn's in the ninth, but so Pisces, MC, Saturn in Pisces. Saturn's the ninth lord and the eighth and the seventh lord and the dispositor of the north node. It's in the ninth quadrant, but moving into the 10th. So Saturn is this sign of leadership, of authority. And he is a leader. He is authority. It's conjuncting the MC from the ninth. So philosophical, spiritual leader. This is excellent. This is perfect. And it's directly opposite Moon, dignified by this Neptune, right? Then Jupiter. Jupiter's in Scorpio. It's trine the MC, right? Trine the MC and Saturn. A little, right in between here. It's fine. It's good. It's in the fifth house, right? Again, so spiritual teacher. Trine the Sun. That's really strong. And so Jupiter exalts in Cancer, so that's dignifying the Sun and the ascendant, right? Mercury is ruling the 12th lord in the 12th, Mercury in Gemini. So that's very strong. The Moon is trine Uranus, a little wide, but still. And Moon exalts in Taurus, so that Moon is going to dignify this Uranus. So we're seeing, strong ninth house through Saturn. Saturn is dignified through Neptune, Moon, Neptune. Sun, sextile Moon, that's fine. Moon's in decent shape. It's square Chiron, right? So that's probably not great. Also, fourth lord in the 12th. He was in exile. He's in exile, right? Because China occupies Tibet, right? They consider it part of China. It's not. Officially, politically it is, but realistically, the people of Tibet are an independent people. They're not Chinese. They don't look Chinese. They don't want to be part of China. It's huge, huge oppression, right? Nobody talks about that. Not many people. But China is really like, so dominating, trolling. But fourth lord in the 12th, that's the exile. But he does quite well in exile, right? He seems to do quite well. But it's a wound for sure. Chiron square the Moon. I'm sure that's emotionally very painful for him. Also, Moon opposite Saturn is going to be very difficult. So we see this Moon that there's some deep troubling pains about his situation. Obviously, having to be the political and spiritual leader of Tibet, but it being in exile, right? So that's and South Node Pluto. Usually whatever's in our South Node, we tend to live out. So this Pluto, this powerful, destructive past that he had of abuse, right? China is abusing Tibet. China's abusing the Dalai Lama. He had to escape for his life. Literally, he had to sneak out of Tibet to get to India, where he could be in exile. All right, let's check his dignities. Yeah, Mercury is very slow, very smart man, highly intuitive. Jupiter's retro, which is really interesting. Saturn's retro, which makes sense because of he had to go against the Chinese government, right? But Jupiter retro shows that his religious, it's also in Scorpio, his religious orientation is backwards. It's going against the grain. He's probably not as well, he's not Orthodox religion. He might be overly religious, and it's trying, and I said like it's trying the sun, or it's dignifying the sun. And also part of this grand water trine, which is very spiritual, psychic, not in water houses, but still very strong spiritual houses. All right, let's keep going. Anandamayi Ma. Anandamayi Ma is probably the most gorgeous, enlightened being you will ever see. Like she's beautiful, like beautiful, like this face, gorgeous face. And she, according to her, she was born enlightened. Like she never had an awakening moment. She was born completely enlightened, complete God consciousness, right? One of the most beautiful women ever. Was completely asexual. She was married, but she had no sexual urges whatsoever. Like it was not even a part of her being. In any case, Venus in the first house in Aries. Venus in Aries, although it's in detriment, did not detract from her beauty at all. Like she's gorgeous. And then she has Sun and Mercury in Taurus. Additionally, Sun in Taurus is beautiful, right? And that's actually a mixed reception between Sun and Venus because Sun is exalted in Aries, Venus is in domicile in Taurus. So there's a little bit of reception here between first and second lord, which is interesting. I mean, she taught, but she also sang. She loved spiritual music, bhajans, and she had a spiritual community, obviously. Moon is in Sag in the 9th, so very philosophical, very religious, God conscious. Moon is opposite Pluto and Neptune, so that is very intense. Obviously nothing negative for somebody like her, but it would indicate very powerful intuition, very spiritual moon. Sun and moon are in conjunct, which is interesting. You don't often see that with these spiritual teachers, but it's still a bright moon, still very bright. Saturn and Uranus in Scorpio retrograde in the 8th house. That's intense. I mean, that shows some deep I want to say, like, because I know she's enlightened, there's really no ego involved, but this is somebody who has very high level mastery of 8th house things, because Scorpio and 8th house. So like, somebody who could really do magic, because Saturn's a master. Uranus is exalted in Scorpio. Uranus is the sign of enlightenment and just the highest abstract kind of thinking. So this is somebody who really has a tremendous occult awareness, magical skills, right? Deep psychic intuition. Opposite Mercury, Uranus, opposite Mercury, exact. So that mercurial brilliance, she like highly intuitive, highly magical being. Neptune is in conjunct Saturn in Scorpio. So that that's tying into it. Also Pluto is playing in there. The inconjunct, would be a challenge, but for somebody such as her, not really. All these things show karma, but when you're enlightened, you really don't have any karma. So it's showing somebody who's, yeah, it's the inconjunct, but it's going to be very easy for her to tap into all of these kind of energies. Moon opposite, Saturn, Uranus inconjunct. Then Mars is in the 12th in Pisces, trine Saturn, a little wide, but 3 degrees, no big deal, right? And Mars rules Scorpio, so Mars is dignifying Saturn, by extension Uranus. Jupiter's ruling the 12th. Jupiter's in the 5th whole sign house, moving into the 5th, right? So again, spiritual teacher. North Node in Pisces in the 11th, moving to the 12th. She had a very active spiritual community, right? And was known for performing miracles. Again, this 8th house, also Mars in Pisces 12th, right? It's very spiritual, magical kind of placements. Mars square Moon, that's not great, but you know what? She could be extremely powerful when she needed to, and squares to Mars are very driven. So let's see, Mars is also square Pluto and Neptune. So I mean, normally this would be, she was very, very sort of, as any enlightened being should be, like disciplined and strict. And like if somebody came to her, because I read stuff about her, and said, "Oh, I want to be enlightened," she would be like, she would get very, very serious and be like, "Okay, you have to do exactly as I say." And so she has this kind of like spiritual drive, because Mars square Pluto is driven, right? And so she could apply that to her own spirituality and to others as well. Mars square Moon, that could go either way. That could be very aggressive or passive aggressive. Maybe the Mars in Pisces in the 12th is sort of hidden. But in any case, for somebody like her, it's not really a problem. She's so enlightened. But in any case, see 9th Lord and 12th Lord activation, Jupiter in Leo, with the first sign. South Node in the 5th, moving to the 6th, North Node in Pisces. A lot of spiritual indications. But let's see here. Let's check the dignities. I mean, it's difficult to put a defining quality. We're, Moon's way out of bounds here. That's really interesting for enlightened being. What would I say? Mars, first Lord in the 12th house in Pisces. I mean, that's really a strong indicator. North Node in Pisces, moving to the 12th, right? Moon opposite Pluto, Neptune, Saturn, and Uranus in the 12th. Jupiter ruling the 9th, and 10th Lord in the 8th, 9th and 12th Lord in the 4th, moving to the 5th. It's in Leo, right? 5th, Leo's the 5th sign, 5th whole sign house. So for spiritual teaching, communication is Pluto, Neptune in Gemini. So also very strong. Okay. Let's keep going. Nisargadatta Maharaj. Just FYI, if you go to astrotheme.com, where I get most of my birth dates, birth charts from, the ascendant will be different from here, but I typed in the exact information and like I triple, quadruple checked it, and the ascendant is off. So I don't know what, I just left it because I don't know if their calculations are wrong or this calculation's wrong, but the ascendant was a little farther. I don't know, I can't remember, maybe like 20 degrees, but it is what it is. It's still pretty much the same thing. So exalted sun in the 1st house. Nisargadatta Maharaj was one of the most fiery, passionate, enlightened beings to ever exist, and crystal clear. Full moon, right? So big bright moon, big bright full moon. exalted sun in the first house, very powerful. This is the same as Bach and Ravi Shankar. Mars, the ascendant lord, Mars in Cancer. That's in poor dignity, right? But Mars in Cancer is supposed to be violent and hypersexual, and he was neither. Potentially violent, but what you can say is this: he did die. He smoked his whole life. He had like a beedi shop. Beedis are clove cigarettes. They have tobacco and cloves in them. It's an Indian kind of cigarette. He had a beedi shop and he smoked his whole life, and so he died of cancer. That we can tell from that. But let's see. Remember, when we can't embody a planet, we project it outwards. So he always held people always came to his home, right? And he would attract all kinds of people. So this can be an outward projection, although it is his ascendant lord. So it is very much him representing his body and the smoking and the condition that he put himself through. But at the same time, I think potentially this still, as it works in the seventh, when the ascendant lord is in the seventh, they're still attracting the poor dignity people, sick people, weak people. I still think there can be this wherever a poor dignity planet is, there can be an outward projection. If you cannot embody it, it will project outwards and you will attract that into your life. So I think this means weak people, poor dignity people coming to his home, which was literal. He held most of his teachings in his home. It was always in his home. So that's that. All right. Jupiter's ruling the 9th and the 12th. Jupiter's in Virgo. 0 degrees, retrograde. Again, this poor dignity Jupiter, 9th and 12th. So again, 5th house. So we see a lot of this. Jupiter in the 5th for spiritual teachers. Do we not? We do. So Jupiter in the 5th. Again, this poor dignity, he was an excellent teacher, not poor dignity at all, not debilitated, not, so detriment, this would be fall, no, detriment. But it's 0 degrees. So this again would be a case where, like the Mars in Cancer, Jupiter in Virgo, people are coming to him who are weak, who are stupid, who are ignorant, and wanting to learn from him. That's literally what this means, because he's an enlightened being. You can go listen to him. He's a master. There's no doubt. Nobody has ever said, oh, Nisargadatta is dumb. Like, probably, but they were the dumb people. Like every other enlightened being is like, Nisargadatta was one of the most lucid enlightened beings to ever exist. Right. Definitely a master. And look, he also has this Uranus Saturn in the 8th, same as Anandamayi Ma, right? This is really interesting. So again, like truly a master of this 8th house, hidden secrets, hidden gems. Saturn the master and Uranus the planet of enlightenment, the great awakener in Scorpio in the 8th house. Retrograde. The retrograde is just going to be more rebellious, more, turning back on itself, questioning. Right. Jupiter, Saturn, ascendant lord in the 8th. Right. We see this with criminals. We see this with fighters. We see this with anyone who's involved in like caves and oil and minerals. We see this with astrologers like myself. And we'll see this, I guess, with spiritual teacher, MC in the 8th. MC Lord in the 8th. 10th Lord in the 8th. Really fascinating. North Node, 11th house, Aquarius. That's really good for popularity. And then that's actually Mercury square the nodes along with Chiron. Mercury opposite Chiron in Scorpio. Mercury Venus. Venus is domicile, excuse me. Very powerful speaker, right? Very passionate. That Venus is coming through. I mean, we think of Mars for that, but I mean, we get that influence with the ascendant and sun. But here we get a Venus quality opposite Chiron and Scorpio. I mean, that's interesting. I can't really relate. I mean, he was a little weird. I mean, he was a little weird looking, but I mean, it's not really bad. And this Chiron could be pretty in Scorpio, crisis oriented, right? That it's square the nodes. It's retrograde. It's in Scorpio. It's the 8th house. But I think he was just beyond that. Like he worked through all that karma. There was nothing left. You know, if that was an issue for him when he was younger, maybe, perhaps. But then and remember, enlightenment means you exhaust your karma. And all these planets, what they do is they have karma, all the squares and conjuncts. So if you see that in an enlightened being, it's like you know, if you study enlightenment, if you study spirituality, enlightened beings will always say karma doesn't bother enlightened being. It's not for enlightened beings. It's only for like the people who are still identified with their body and their mind. Right. So all these red lines, that's exhausted karma. It's no longer applicable. So it's not like he has these issues. All right. What else can we say? Um, fourth lord and the 7th, right? He's teaching other people. He's caring about other people. Very active teacher, very passionate. Community, North Node and Aquarius and the 11th would make somebody very popular. Good. This is excellent for speaking. The full moon, 12th and 9th and the 5th. South Node in the 5th in Leo. 5th Lord in the 1st. So these are all strong indicators. I mean, Chiron was a teacher and a healer as well, right? So let's say this is a healed Chiron, spiritual teacher in the 7th, 8th cusp, basically. Let's check the dignities. Obviously, I'm not going to talk about everything. I'm really just trying to focus on the spirituality of the chart. Jupiter's retro. It's definitely not religious in the orthodox sense. I don't know why Mercury. I mean, I guess they yeah. Anyway, scoring is a little weird in this program, but oh, whatever, doesn't matter. That's Nisargadatta. I love his stuff. If you haven't read anything by Nisargadatta and you are interested in spirituality, go do it right now. He wrote the book I Am That. I Am That. I Am That. Ramana Maharshi was perhaps not only my opinion, which I agree with, but a lot of people's opinion, the most enlightened sage in modern times. Like truly masterful, masterfully enlightened. And he was born during a full moon eclipse. Right? Powerful. If you're born during an eclipse, full moon eclipse, this is a karmic life. And when I say that, let me clarify. Some people say that just like it's supposed to mean. What I mean is that your karma is ripe. There's a ripe fruit of karma in this life. Also, grand earth trine, right? And the axis. And this is, I mean, talking about karma, this is, I mean, reversed from Donald Trump, but Donald Trump was also born during an eclipse north, MCIC axis, so similar. But he had this. Donald Trump has his sun in the 10th, moon in the 4th, a little bit reversed. Nodes are stationary. Moon is in domicile. Sun is in Capricorn. Right, sun in Capricorn. We see that quite a bit. In the 3rd, moving to the 4th. Right. Venus is the ascendant lord. That's in Scorpio in the 2nd. Interesting. And he did have some physical frailties. He walked with a cane. And he got sick towards the end of his life, but he lived long enough, and he really didn't care. They wanted to do. He had like some arm tumor, and they wanted to operate, and he was like, "No, I want to go. I want to go, and I want to go. I want to. I don't want. Just let me go on my own terms." He really was so enlightened. He did not. He was not eager to extend his life at all. He was like, let me go. I'm good. Truly, truly enlightened. So Jupiter in the fifth. That's again and again, we'll see that. Jupiter in the fifth, Jupiter in the fifth, Jupiter in the fifth. Right? For these spiritual teachers, Jupiter in domicile and Pisces in the fifth. Opposite, Uranus. Exactly. Boom. That's such a powerful configuration. And it's a kite, right? So grand Earth trine with Jupiter in Pisces in the fifth house. That's a kite as the head of the kite. Mercury's ruling the ninth house. It's in Sag. It's not good dignity, but Mercury in Sag is very philosophical. Mercury's also ruling the 12th, right? And planets in poor dignity, remember, can be outsourced. This is what I like to say, meaning projected outwards. When you can't embody that, then it comes outward as other people. This third house. So third house would relate to community, similar to 11th house. Third house is the neighborhood. He had a community, right? He had an active community. 11th Lord Sun in Capricorn. He was the head of this community. That's what he started. Third, fourth. He moved when he was young. He at the age of 9, somebody died, and it sparked something in him, and he's like, "Oh, I wonder what it's like to die." So he went out. He went down. He laid down and let himself die, not physically, but ego death. And that's what it takes. Like he went through the full experience, became enlightened. This is all due to past karma. Like he was already extremely enlightened before then, and then just in this incarnation, he just probably had very small, like tiny bit of karma, and then he could, lay down and die and become this enlightened being. Then he moved to Arunachala, just on his own intuition. Arunachala is the mountain, which was his lover, you could say. It's a very weird thing. Like he wrote love poems to this mountain. He was in love with this mountain, and he set up his home there. And he gradually attracted people who recognized his enlightenment, and an active, vibrant community started on this mountaintop where he just sat down, in like a cave or something. And it's still there, Arunachala. It's like a shrine dedicated to Ramana Maharshi. And so, yeah. So 10th Lord in the 10th house, South Node, excellent dignity. Then we see all these 7th, 8th house. So 8th house, right? Still very prominent for these spiritual teachers. And we got Pluto, Mars. And this we're moving into the 7th. So 7th moving into the 8th. Chiron, Neptune, Mars, Pluto. Right. Mars and Pluto are opposite Venus, so that's actually by opposition dignifying this Venus, which is the ascendant lord, right? So even though the ascendant lord is weak, it gets some dignity from Mars and Pluto, opposite, because they rule Scorpio. Yeah, let's see. Jupiter is also ruling the 6th lord in the 5th house. He had incredible, and Saturn is in Aries in the 6th. Well, that's not good dignity, but he had an incredible relationship with animals. Like he could communicate with animals, literally. And animals loved him. The monkeys in the forest, because he's in India, the snakes, he had a cow that would come to him, and they would go into samadhi meditation together. And he actually could see into the soul of the cow, and he saw that the cow was almost an enlightened being. Like he had one final life to live, and he had this little bit of karma that he had to burn off in the form of a cow, but he was very evolved. So he had this deep awareness, right? And that would be an 8th house awareness, or a 12th house, I guess you could say. What else was I gonna say? Yeah, Jupiter's square the sun, but Jupiter is ruling. That's actually a mixed perception, interestingly enough, because Sun exalted in Aries, Saturn in domicile in Capricorn, and they are square by 2 degrees, so that's pretty good. And that would be the 7th and 4th. So bring other people into his home. That makes sense. Again, South Node Moon also is highly intuitive and psychic, often brilliantly psychic. Very sharp mind. But again, we're seeing a lot of South Node connections with these spiritual gurus, because they've been through so much, right? You have to have a long history of spirituality, of development. So there has to be, not has to be, but ideally there will be a lot of connections to the South Node for these very evolved spiritual beings. So that's a good indicator if you want to know your evolution is South Node conjunct a planet. Will show you some things. Nodes are station. That's interesting. Outer planets are retro. Chiron's retro. Venus and Mars, mutual reception. Yeah, I didn't even realize it. Yeah, obviously. Yeah. Venus is dignifying Mars. Mars dignifying Venus. They're trading places. 8th and 2nd. And he did, I mean, go read up about Ramana Maharshi. He was a magical being. Highly. He could change his shape, he could read people's minds like easily. Like he was extremely psychic. And everyone attributed all kinds of magical events to him that he took no credit for, but it was his incarnation, right? There was no ego there. So he wasn't like, yes, I did it. But highly magical being. And that's 8th and 2nd. And he could explain any phenomenon. And he could look at you and penetrate your heart. Like if you came at him with like religious people would come to him and be like, oh, you're wrong, blah, 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 blah. And he would just stare at them, not saying a word. And he would get them to break down and cry. And they would just walk away, leaving defeated. So Swami Muktananda. I do not know this person, but they are a spiritual guru teacher. So I'm going to try and move a little faster with, especially with some of them that I have less knowledge of them. But again, full moon, right? That's very prominent in his chart. Moon in the 7th, moon in poor dignity. So again, like bringing weak people to him, helping them, weak, sick, that kind of thing. Ascendant Lord Venus in Cancer with North Node, South Node Uranus, right? 9th house, South Node Uranus. Bingo. Ascendant Lord conjunct Neptune and North Node in Cancer. In the 3rd house, Jupiter and Leo in the 4th. So Jupiter and Leo, not the 5th house this time, but in Leo in the 4th. So it's still teaching, spiritual teaching. Jupiter trine Saturn. Saturn's not in good dignity. But let's see here. No aspect from Mars. It's square the nodes, so that's not very good dignity. Actually, but Saturn is exalted. Saturn is not exalted, dignifying the South Node. Because it's by square by so early on enlightenment, right? Saturn's the 9th lord in the 12th house. Mars is the 12th lord conjunct Pluto in Gemini in the 2nd. So that's about communication. 12th lord, communication. Mars rules Aries, but there's no real connection there. Mercury's the 5th lord in Gemini in the 2nd. So that's, teaching, education, speaking. Sun's in the 4th. Yeah. Retro. Venus is out of bounds. Mars in domicile, very clever. But yeah, I mean, this is very, very strong for indicator for spiritual enlightenment. And the 9th lord and the 12th. MC Lord in the 12th. Full moon. Right. Jupiter in Leo. Ascendant Lord conjunct Neptune. 12th Lord conjunct Pluto. Now moon is square Chiron. Chiron square the sun and the moon. It's a T-square. So that's interesting. Definitely make him an outcast. We make him a little bit weird, but probably good for his spiritual evolution. All right, let's keep going. Osho Bhagwan Rajneesh. Osho. Very, very controversial figure. I mean, a lot of, like, if you post a Osho quote, somebody will inevitably pipe up and be like, oh, Osho was involved in all this nasty stuff like that. Like, I know he was involved in all this nasty stuff, but he was also a very brilliant man, very, very spiritual, very enlightened. And yes, the ego can come in and sort of wreak havoc, do monkey business, which seems to be the case with Osho Rajneesh, but it doesn't mean that he was uninvolved. It just means that he wasn't supremely enlightened like Ramana Maharshi or Sri Anandamayi Ma. Like, there was still room for that little bit of ego to come in there and make a mess. But you don't get to be somebody like Osho without having supreme kind of, tapping into the higher realms and whatnot. So let's find out what's going on here. Capricorn stellium, right? Don't ever let anyone tell you that Capricorns are not spiritual. They certainly can be, right? Mars, exalted Mars in Capricorn. Mercury, Venus, Moon is in poor dignity in Capricorn. It's in detriment, but then Saturn is in domicile. So we got two really good planets, one not so good planet. And Saturn is directly opposite Pluto. And this moon would dignify this Pluto, right? But that's very heavy. First of all, very tense, very obsessive, right? And in order for, if you know about, so Osho had all sorts of troubles with the law, right? And he was very, very popular. 11th house, Uranus, North Node, and exalted Mars, ruler of the 11th house. So popularity, community, spiritual community, North Node, Uranus this time. Nothing South Node, although Mars is square the nodes, which would dignify the North Node. So North Node better. 11th house, very, very popular. Tons and tons and tons of people really loved and worshipped Osho and wanted to be a part of his community. And he raised tons of money through donations, right? Like a fortune. And he's driving around in fancy cars, and then it just got so excessive that it became corrupt. And there was even like murder involved, right? And Osho himself was taking drugs. But look at this. Mercury's stationary and Neptune is stationary. So, and they're trying each other. And Mercury rules Virgo. So this trine is like brilliant. It's genius. It's fourth and an eighth, right? So the eighth house, secrets of the eighth house, like this brilliant treasure chest. Eighth house is hidden treasures, right? And this opposition to Pluto would really, adds to that brilliance. Sun in Sagittarius. Let's see. Mercury is his ascendant lord, stationary. That's very powerful, very, very powerful being in the eighth house. Jupiter's the MC lord. Jupiter's in Leo. retrograde, right? Jupiter Leo. It's in the third, but it's Leo. And it's retrograde, so definitely unorthodox. Communication, teaching, spiritual teaching. North node in the 11th with Uranus. Uranus is square moon. That just makes him quite radical, deeply radical, especially with this Capricorn moon, which is not in good dignity. Moon is ruling second house, so his values, money, interesting. Like he was extremely wealthy through donations, through shared resources, right? Donations would be an eighth house thing, they're shared. But Pluto in the second is very obsessive about resources. And he had a whole big compound, Rolls Royces, tons of money. He was making a mess. He's a monkey. This guy's a monkey. I'm telling you, he's a monkey because he was a trickster, major trickster, Gemini ascendant, right? And very powerful Mercury. Trying this Neptune. Oh my gosh. Right, station. Crazy. I mean, it's so rare to have two stations. One station, yeah. Two, oh my gosh. And you know why a station is so powerful? Sun and Jupiter. Sun, Jupiter, mutual reception, right? So 7th, 3rd, 3rd, 7th. This is very social, right? Communication, other people. And Leo, spiritual teaching. Stationary is so potent, especially Mercury or any of the inner planets, because think about it. Mercury is normally moves very fast, right? So that's its normal state of being. If it's staying still, then it's more like an outer planet. Why is Pluto so powerful? Because Pluto barely moves. So it's like focused, right? Pluto's focused in one spot, therefore it can really have a powerful impact because it's so stationary. It's so like, staying in one spot. If you like do any kind of movement, like one where it's like one spot, you're gonna do damage. Like you're punching a spot in wood, like again, you're gonna have an indent there. That's Pluto. That's a stationary planet. Neptune station is good. Not nearly as powerful as Mercury station, because now Mercury, which is a personal planet, is still. So it's like super duper potent. Like you have to understand that stationary outranks anything. It's better than exalted. It's better than domicile. It's more powerful, right? So he's got two stationary planets. Mercury is also dignifying this Neptune. That's amazing. The guy was a genius, and it went to his head. His ego took over, and he made a mess. So yeah, that's Osho. And like I said, very radical. Moon square Uranus. And let's see. Again, planets in poor dignity, they can represent the person. And I think this did represent him, but it could also be people that he attracts into his into his community, into his life. Let's keep going. Ramakrishna, another very, very enlightened being, was a Hindu religious teacher and an influential figure in the Bengal Renaissance. His teaching emphasized God realization as the highest goal of life, love and devotion for God, oneness in existence, and the harmony of religions. Okay, I'll just keep it. Not relevant. All right. Aquarius ascendant with Neptune right on the ascendant. That's the other place you'll see these outer planets. Neptune, Uranus, Pluto. Obviously not always, right? You can have people who are not very spiritual with any of these combinations. South node conjunct a planet, north node or ascendant, but still. So Saturn. So ascendant Lord, Saturn in Scorpio, MC in Scorpio, ninth house, ninth quadrant, but 10th whole sign house. South node widely conjunct Saturn. I mean, some people wouldn't call it's in the same sign, let's put it that way. Still has an influence. Divided by the MC, so 9th, 10th. Anyway, there's the grand water trine with Jupiter and Cancer in the 6th house, retrograde, and Mercury in Pisces conjunct Uranus and Moon. So very strong Piscean influence here. Pisces ruling the 5th, or sorry, Mercury's ruling the 5th, Moon's ruling the 6th. Yeah, Uranus is the co-ascendant lord, along with Saturn, both in water signs. Right? Grand water trine, ascendant lord trine, exalted Jupiter. Jupiter dignifying this Pisces, Mercury especially, but also Moon and Uranus. Moon, and that's actually a mutual reception. Moon and Jupiter sign, Jupiter and Moon sign. So that's 6th and 2nd lord. That's interesting. 6th and 2nd. I really don't know much about Ramakrishna, but he's teaching something about everyday spirituality, right? 2nd house speaking, 6th house, everyday spirituality, mundane spirituality, spirituality of everyday life, right? Chop wood, carry water, cook food, clean clothes, all that good stuff, right? Very spiritual. Venus is the 9th lord. It's not really, it's not in good dignity. It's at 0 degrees Aries. Saturn's the MC lord, and Saturn's the ascendant lord and the 12th lord. That's part of this grand trine, right? Not particularly dignified, but it is in a water sign, and it is part of this exalted Jupiter, and Jupiter dignifying this Mercury plus Moon and Uranus. See Pluto in the 3rd. Not really doing much. Semi-square to the sun, it seems like. Mercury is the 8th lord. So that's going to be relevant. 8th and 5th. Yeah, so for spirituality, that's both very prominent. North node in Taurus in the 4th. He just wants to be at home. This could be projected outwards, this Venus in Aries. Speaking to, communicating to weak people. Relative to him. Right? It's got to be that way, because if nobody needs them, then they're not going to come to him. MC Lord Mars in the 1st, in Aquarius. 3rd Lord Mars. Mars is an excellent dignity. Mars is sextile Pluto. Mars is dignifying this Pluto because it rules Aries. So, anyways, Ramakrishna. Saturn seems pretty slow. Jupiter, Mars. No. Jupiter, Moon. Mars, Saturn. Already looked at Jupiter, Moon. Mars, Saturn. Mutual reception. So that's 1st and 10th. So that's definitely public image, career related, right? Famous for something, obviously for spirituality. Right? Moon, Jupiter, mutual reception. That's very powerful. Again, the moon, right? Moon playing an active role in spirituality. Sadhguru, he's alive and well today. Spiritual teacher. Gemini ascendant. Very strong Virgo. So Virgo is square Gemini. It's really going to check that trickster quality of Gemini. That's what I have, Virgo moon. So, you know, if you want to know how tricksy a Gemini is, well, you're gonna have to look to the earth signs. The earth signs are not having it, right? If they have strong earth, they're probably gonna be way less tricksy than, like fire signs and air signs altogether. But then they're probably gonna be more of a comedian anyway. Their signs are, and I guess probably somewhat also water is gonna, make it very heavy and more serious. But definitely the earth is going to be a major check against over, you know, too much, too much jokester influence. Also, Mercury is the ascendant lord in Virgo. It's exalted. Pluto, Sun, Mars, fourth house. Jupiter in the fifth house again, right? Venus in the fifth. Neptune in Scorpio in the fifth. Venus in domicile in the fifth. In Libra. So many Jupiter and Leo, Jupiter, fifth house, very strong indicator. Grand Earth trine, Moon in Capricorn in the eighth, right? Moon in Capricorn is not in good dignity, obviously, but they're so mature a lot of times. Like they're just really very mature, very responsible. I guess there can be some bad behavior with some of them because it's just you don't have good dignity, but any case. Neptune, Pluto, sextile. That's going to be quite good. Chiron in the ninth. And again, Chiron was a teacher, was a healer. Yeah, he was rejected for being weird and he got wounded. But, for somebody, for an evolved being, they're going to have the more evolved expression of Chiron, which is teacher, healer, ninth house. Saturn is ruling the ninth. That's in Sagittarius, very philosophical, moving into the seventh, very pretty much conjunct the seventh house, seventh cusp. And Saturn does well in the seventh, shows very mature relationships. Moon in the eighth is definitely psychic potential. In Capricorn, probably not as much, but still very sensitive moon. Right? I don't want to say he's outright psychic, maybe, but definitely intuitive, sensitive. The South Node in the 12th, Venus is the 12th Lord in the 5th. So for spiritual teaching, again, that's excellent. Uranus trine Saturn. Saturn's the 9th Lord, so that's also excellent for being able to relay the Uranian enlightened quality. There's a semi-septile from Neptune to, biseptile from Neptune to Chiron. So teaching. Chiron is square the nodes as well. So this Chiron is going to play a very important role for him as far as his destiny is concerned, being a teacher. All right, fifth house, ninth house, Jupiter, Chiron. North node in the sixth in Scorpio. So something about everyday daily work, going to work on a daily basis as a teacher. He's very popular, very successful spiritual teacher. And yes, his chart makes absolute sense. Mercury and Venus in domicile. Baba Sitaram. I really actually don't know this one, but he's a spiritual teacher. He was an Indian guru, respected saint, thought to be the reincarnation of Sri Ramakrishna. He was a master of shaktipat diksha. That's where you the guru will touch you and like give you some special kind of shakti, which is spiritual energy, spiritualized energy. And he has Jupiter and Pisces right on the ascendant. Very, very prominent for a spiritual teacher. Sun in the 12th. Jupiter is MC Lord, right? That's very strong. He himself, as an individual, Baba Sitaram, spiritual career. Right? Mars is in Sag in the ninth. That's the second lord, so he's speaking, but also is taking up most of the first. Venus is in the first, so he's probably very, beautiful Venusian type person, also Jupiterian. Venus is the eighth lord and the third lord. South node widely conjunct Uranus in Scorpio in the eighth house, but moving to the ninth because the ninth is pretty close to the ninth cusp. Right. So again, the south node, Uranus. Mars is ruling the ninth. Mars is in Sag in the ninth, but 10th whole sign house, moving into the 10th. So something very spiritual, philosophical about that. No aspect between Jupiter. That's okay. Sun, moon, trine by sign, not by degree. So still that harmony we have with the sun and the moon. Saturn on the 7th, Saturn and moon in the 7th. That's really good. This moon in Libra is going to benefit just by association, just by being on the same chart, really, but even more so in the same house. That Libran energy is going to influence the Saturn, dignifying it, right? That Saturn is going to siphon off this moon in Libra to get that Libran energy to be more balanced, fair Saturn. That's really why Saturn is exalted in Libra, because Saturn, being this authority figure, learns how to be relational and balanced and peaceful. The very mature Saturn, right? So any of that Libran energy is going to soak into this, Saturn, making it much more fair and balanced. The Mercury is opposite Chiron. And so this again is invoking this teacherly quality. And Chiron's in Leo in the 5th house. So here we're not having Jupiter in the 5th or in Leo. We're having Chiron in Leo. And Chiron, again, was a spiritual teacher. Chiron has a Jupiterian quality. Jupiter's in the 1st in Pisces, so very much spiritual teacher. Chiron is trine really tightly Mars. Chiron, so this shape here, this 14, 14, 14, 14 is really tight. Mercury, expression, 11th house, groups, communities. Mars in Sag, being the 9th lord, so very philosophical and somewhat adventurous, right? Trine and opposite Chiron and Leo, 5th house, retrograde, but still very teacherly, spiritual oriented. Neptune and Pluto, exactly. This aspect is amazing, actually, right? Because it's 6 degrees, all three outer planets are at 6 degrees in conjunct, but still Pluto co-rules Scorpio, so dignifying this Uranus and Scorpio, which is already exalted, conjunct, widely conjunct the South Node, 8th house. So deep into the mysteries, deep into that awareness, mystical awareness of the 8th house. Saturn is the 12th lord. It's in the 7th. It's got a connection to Chiron and Mercury. Sun in the 12th in Aquarius. So this is all very, very spiritually significant for a spiritual teacher. Pluto is very, very slow here, and so is Neptune. Mercury and Saturn, mutual reception. Mercury, Saturn, yes. And there's the semi sesquisquare. So that's actually very significant. That's 12th and 7th. 12th and 7th Lord exchange. Or you could even say 11th because Mercury's in the 11th. So that's, community, connection, communication with others, and spiritual communication. And then just let me check the other planets. No, it's not Saturn. It's Uranus minus 7 days, 1 day, direct station. This Pluto is practically stationary, and so is this Neptune. Telling you because Neptune, oh wait, Neptune, yeah, Neptune, Pluto, 1 day, 2 days. So these are almost stationary. That's really, really powerful in the third house. Shows a very powerful intellect, very deep minded. Neptune, Pluto in conjunct Uranus in Scorpio in the 8th house. It's brilliant. Like for the higher mind, for like the penetrating psychic, even deeply powerful, connected to the spiritual realm. Rudolf Steiner, another Westerner. They're almost all Indian guys. Notice. All right, Scorpio rising. Rudolf Steiner needs no introduction. I went to a Waldorf school. I read some of Steiner's books. Truly, truly a mystic, gifted, highly, highly psychic, spiritual. Yeah. Okay. One thing to know about Rudolf Steiner is he was murdered. So, Mars conjunct Pluto in poor dignity. In poor dignity would not signify murder. It would signify weak health and short life, one or the other, or both. But Ascendant Lord conjunct Pluto in poor dignity, it's not good. I would never say that means somebody's going to die young, but it's definitely not surprising. But yeah, this is when it's in poor dignity in 7th, it shows that it's a helper, helping, hurting. So definitely helping. Weak people coming to him, and he's helping them. But also he likes to have lots of control and power, but he's very enlightened, so non-egotistical. But he was very powerful. Okay. MC Lord's Sun is in Pisces. So Sun in the 5th house, Pisces. So Sun, Mercury, Neptune. Again, this 5th house activation for spiritual teacher, and 9th house, right? Moon's ruling the 9th is in Virgo, 2 degrees from mine. Actually, my moon is very similar in the 11th house in Virgo. Very analytical, very sharp, and very socially minded, big, ideological, abstract thinking. Venus is ruling the 12th, in the 3rd, 4th, moon to the 4th, moon 11th. So philosophical community, spiritual community, philosophical community, and he built a community around himself. Jupiter in Leo, right? We see this a lot. Again, the 5th house connection, the Leo, the Jupiter in Leo, Jupiter 5th house, conjunct the MC. And that's a mutual reception between Sun and Jupiter. So 5th and MC. So again, the spiritual teaching as a career, that's shown here. Jupiter's the 5th lord and the 2nd lord. So speaking, teaching, education. 5th house is education. It's entertainment, it's fun and games, but it's also in regards to spirituality, it's spiritual teaching. It's spiritual practices. It's spiritual books. Venus in the conjunct the 4th cusp, conjunct the IC, excellent for physical creativity. And he designed all kinds of things. He designed spiritual architecture, art in general, paintings. He did sculptures. So he very much had this 4th house, 4th house Venus, spirituality. South node in the 9th. That again shows a past of 9th house religion, philosophy, spirituality. Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. Uranus in Gemini, moving into the 8th house. So brilliant for, and it's square the sun. So that is tying, even though it's a square, it's tying into the sun, it's connecting the sun with Uranus, right? So deep secrets, heightened intuition. Eighth Lord Mercury is in Pisces. So Mercury in Pisces is actually really good for psychic development, for psychics, and it's conjunct Neptune. So this is a very, he was highly psychic, highly psychic. Yeah, not great for logic, but with the moon and Saturn and Virgo, that takes care of that. That's very logical, right? But yeah, this is brilliant, psychic, highly intuitive, with Uranus and Gemini in the eighth, and then, well, seventh, eighth, moving into the eighth. But then this Mercury Pisces and Sun in Pisces, Neptune Pisces, fifth house Pisces. You know, by the way, you know who killed him? Other occultists, dark occultists, who did not like how powerful he was and how good he was, because you know, they were evil. They wanted power and control for their ego. That's really what Satanism is. It's the ego, and that's what these dark occultists are. They're Satanists. So, you know, people like oversimplification. They say if anyone's into like the cult secrets, they're Satanists. That's not true. That's 100% not true. There were good occultists and bad occultists. They call it the left hand and the right hand. I think the left hand is the bad side and the right hand is the good side. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you can use occult secrets to evolve spiritually, or you can use occult secrets to feed the ego and to de-evolve, to gain karma, right? To hurt people. So it's Sun opposite Saturn and Moon conjunct Saturn. So he's very Saturnian, right? And that's not good for, it's not good if you cannot embody it. But somebody as evolved as Steiner is going to be very self-disciplined, which he was, and very mature and very responsible. And he was very much a Saturnian type leader. He led a lot of people and invented so many things, wrote so many books, gave so many lectures, started anthroposophy, Steiner schools. He was behind so many things, biodynamic farming, all kinds of arts and crafts and dance, eurythmy and drama, all kinds of things, right? So he's very, very creative and very authoritative. People listen to him. They love to listen to him. Right. So he was very much embodying the Saturn. If not, it would be difficult, but he was mature and responsible enough to be able to have that. Jupiter opposite Venus, and I think this is actually helping a lot with his creativity. People would come to him and say, what about this, what about that? And just out of that relationship, Jupiter opposite Venus and Sun opposite Saturn, he would create something new. Most of his creations came out of relationships where people were asking him, seeking his guidance. How do we do this? How do we do that? And he would just come up, education, right? Arts, dance, life, food, everything. Get all kinds of ideas. Brilliant man. And Sun and Jupiter, mutual reception, which I already talked about. Jupiter, Saturn, retro. Definitely going against religion and authority. He was a rebel. He was going against these powerful dark occultists, and he knew he was in trouble. They poisoned him. Pluto conjunct Mars and Taurus in the seventh. Pluto, Scorpio, poison. Yeah. Both opposite the ascendant. So Pluto and Taurus, because it's domicile in Aquarius, Scorpio, also in poor dignity in Taurus. Vanessa Stone, this is my teacher. Tremendously beautiful lady. Almost every bit as beautiful as Anandamayi Ma. Vanessa Stone is gorgeous, and she's got that Neptune and Sag ascendant. So Neptune, Sag ascendants alone, wonderful. It's so fiery, so like, just they just got like they're like a wildfire. They're like a wild stallion, a wild mare, a wild horse. They're just beautiful, beautiful people, creatures. And then she's got Neptune from the 12th conjunct the ascendant in Sagittarius, so highly spiritual, right? And then she's got 9th house Sun and Venus, where Sun is ruling the 9th house. It's in the 10th whole Sun house, but 9th cusp, 9th quadrant. And Sun conjunct Venus, also an indicator of beauty. Venus is in poor dignity, but it's retrograde. Highly self-critical when young. Mercury is exalted conjunct the MC, so great for speaking and teaching in public, which she does. She's an excellent teacher. Jupiter in the 5th house with Chiron in Aries this time, but still we see this again and again and again. Jupiter, Chiron, 5th house. Right. Spiritual teacher. South node moon. South node moon, right? Ramana Maharshi had this. A lot of psychic, intuitive people have this. Sixth house. She's all about service to others. Mars in Gemini in the 6th, moving in the 7th. She's a boss lady. She is. I mean, she holds programs, she teaches, she does like all sorts. She runs a community. Deeply, deeply spiritual lady. North node in Scorpio in the 12th. Like just diving into the abyss. Deep dive into endless spirituality. Let's see what else. Mars is the 12th lord. Gemini in the 7th. In opposite Neptune. Okay. So that's definitely going to convey this Neptunian wisdom, right, to others in a very commanding way. She's a boss lady. Saturn is in, that's not great. But remember, this can be healing, right? Other people coming to her, 8th house, intimate, very intimate, right? So who need help, nurturing, Saturn, authority, right? Saturn's not in good dignity, but this can be projected outwards to help people who need help. 8th house would be a more intimate connection, right? So this would be more, intimate. I want to say healing. I want to say there's something very, it's disposited by moon, which is conjunct the south node in the 6th house. There's the sextile to Mercury. Mercury's conjunct the MCs. It's exalted. Mercury's ruling the 7th. So there's teaching involved. Square Chiron, which is the healer, but also Uranus, which is the awakener. So these are the methods, Jupiter, with which she's going to help in a very intimate way, a very deeply touching way. I have personal experience with Vanessa, obviously, so I'm drawing from that as well. She's so powerful. I always credit her with saving my life, because I was in a very dark place when I met her, and she really showed me so much of what life can be and what people can be, because I was very disenchanted, very jaded at that time. But yeah, so we see a lot. We see the strong 5th house, the south node moon, north node 12th house Scorpio, Neptune Sag ascendant, 9th lord in the 9th house. How she deals with people who come to her in poor dignity. It's in a very intimate, deep way, right? Where she's an authority and she's going to use, all her tools at her disposal. Uranus in the 11th house shows an enlightened community of enlightened people, which she has. She has an actual land-based community in Hawaii, farm, people with growing stuff, and spiritual, and she holds retreats there and she teaches. So she's great. She's brilliant. Venus retrograde. Venus retrograde, I can testify with knowing Vanessa that her sense of fashion and style is definitely retrograde. It's definitely going against the grain. She's not trendy at all. Like, she loves to look however she wants to look, you know, which is great. You know, it's very original, very unique, and beautiful. Very strong Mercury, right? Exalted conjunct the MC. Very strong Mercury. Very smart. Very, very, very intelligent lady. Teal Swan, a very controversial spiritual teacher. Some people freak out if you just mention her name because they'll say, she's enabling rapists or whatever. Like, she has all these weird ideas, but Geminis, she's got a Gemini stellium in the 12th house. Geminis get in trouble with what they say, and this is exactly what happens with Teal Swan. Teal Swan will say stuff where, and I get it, it's a perspective, and Gemini is all about mental gymnastics. I'm a Gemini, I get it. She'll say stuff like, and this is out of context, and I don't really listen to her, so I have listened to her, and I think she's beautiful, by the way, and she has Sun Kazemi Venus in Gemini, but she'll say stuff like a person who gets raped, like if a woman gets raped, it's her fault. That's totally provocative, and I would never say that, and it's highly triggering to a lot of people. I understand her perspective, and if you hear her explain herself, she'll explain it, and she's not coming from an uncompassionate place, so I think people just need to chill out. But obviously people have wounds, traumas that get easily triggered, and they don't know how to heal themselves, and so like they just don't want to hear anything like that. They want to be a victim. And she's got South Node Uranus again, so South Node Uranus also is an indicator of trauma. So it's not always just like, oh, South Node Uranus, you're an enlightened being, right? No, Uranus is trauma. Pluto is abuse. Neptune could be drugs and alcohol. And she does have a past of trauma, but she does have the same similar markings of a lot of other enlightened beings. South Node Uranus, it's in Sag, right? Sagittarius, very philosophical, spiritual. So yeah, and there's that. But trauma was part of her past, deep trauma. She escaped a very abusive community. And, I have Uranus on the ascendant. I also had a very traumatic, not upbringing, but certain events. When Pluto was transiting my first house, like Pluto in Scorpio or 80s, very, very difficult. My brother was hit by a train and killed. I cut my knee down to the bone. Like, it was wide open. It was like the doctor was like, that's the worst cut I've ever seen. Like, my whole knee was tore open. I broke both arms in 3 places. So yeah, it was bad. But any case, so that's the trauma of Uranus. Moon is her ascendant lord. It's in the 7th, but 8th whole sign house in Aquarius. So very abstract thinking. Aquarius deals with high level abstract thinking. So it's very intellectual. And if you want to understand it, just think about the number 11 being a prime number. I should go over this separately, but prime numbers hold themselves together, whereas divisible numbers break down. So a prime number will have like its integrity, but it's very high. It's a number 11. So that's sort of like the brilliance of Aquarius, is this ability to hold this very elaborate concept and it works, right? It's not just a concept that, people have this idea like what everything, like math is, anything you say is right. It's modern woke is Neptunian crap, really, because things don't work unless they work, right? But the highest you can get is in this 12 cycle of 12 is Aquarius, because that's the highest ideology. After that, it breaks down. It's Aquarius. Aquarius is the highest ideology. Pisces is a breakdown. Pisces doesn't work in the actual, as far as like practical workingness goes. Whereas that's why Aquarius is the sign of the inventor. It works. The light bulb works, right? You can't just say, well, let's do it. Let's blah, blah, blah. Let's put whatever we want in there, stuff it full of mashed potatoes and screw it into, drop it in water and it's going to light up. No, that's not going to, it doesn't work. Right. But that Pisces will do something like that. They'll be like, oh, let's draw on it and then it'll work. let's change its gender and color it purple. Then it'll light up. No. It doesn't work. So that's quite brilliant. Aquarius, anything Aquarius has the potential for brilliance. So does Gemini. And then we're getting the trine, even though it's not by degree, we're still getting that sun trine moon by sign. Jupiter. Jupiter's the 9th lord. It's not good dignity here in Capricorn. And, she has her troubles, and she's not, like, I will say this, she's not the most enlightened being out there, but she does have some, strong, first of all, psychic qualities with this 12th house stellium and South Node Uranus. Moon in Aquarius is very sensitive, if not psychic. That is her ascendant lord. But let's see. And we have this 5th house activation here, with Mars and Saturn. Mars in domicile, Mars conjunct Saturn. That's very that's interesting. It doesn't feel great to me, even though Mars in Scorpio, because Mars and Saturn together are very rough and aggressive. But this does tie back into her childhood. 5th house is, the early school where she was abused, right? And then Pluto is in the 4th house. That's a very abusive, potentially abusive. But it's square the moon. So that, again, moon is her ascendant lord square Pluto. That's not great. So she does have her issues, but I'm not going to completely dismiss her. North Node Chiron teacher, but weird, I guess you could say. It's like 9th lord. So Mercury in Gemini is the 12th lord. 9th lord, not so much. But again, this could be a case where she is, sort of helping weak people. 6th house serving. Neptune is in Capricorn in the 6th. Let's see. What else? So Uranus also is it's gonna be a little bit opposite Chiron and Mercury. So that's brilliant. What else? I think that's it. Second lord in the 12th. MC lord in the 5th. So there is that spiritual teaching, quality. A lot of retrogrades. Right? And retrogrades, not only is the person going to be sort of self-effacing, questioning society, questioning themselves, doing things differently, going against the grain, being more rebellious, but also they're going to attract a lot of that. She's got a lot of retrogrades. So not only is she going to be going against everyone, a lot of people are going to be against her. That's unfortunately, if you have a lot of retrogrades, that does happen. Right. Yeah, there are a lot of people who don't like her. So not surprised seeing all these retrogrades, because in the chart you can see it as oppositions and in conjuncts. But she does have Mars and Mercury in domicile. I'm sorry. Moon's out of bounds. That's about it. All right, let's keep going. Swami Vivekananda. He's another one. He wore a turban and he's got these big bulgy eyes, right? Very round face. But anyway, spiritual teacher. Let's see. Was one of the most famous and influential spiritual leaders of the philosophies of Vedanta and yoga, and a major figure in the history of Hinduism in India. He was the chief disciple of Ramakrishna, Paramahamsa, and founder of Ramakrishna Math and Ramakrishna Mission. All right, well, Capricorn Sun, again, a lot of these Capricorns, a lot. Capricorn Sun and Venus, where Sun's ruling the 8th house. So that mysticism, occultism, eighth house secrets, magic. Sun in the first is also, so this is very strongly a leader type. Mars, this is MC Lord. Mars is in Aries in the third quadrant technically, but it's fourth whole sign house. Jupiter in Libra, Moon in Libra, Saturn in Libra, exalted. Saturn's exalted. Saturn's the ascendant Lord. So ascendant Lord conjunct Moon. Saturn is going to dignify the ascendant and Sun and Venus, even though it's out of degree, still there's some good connection there. Saturn also is going to, it's trine Mercury and dignifying Mercury. And then Venus and Saturn have a mutual reception. So that would be, it's not really ruling a cusp here, but it's dispositing Saturn, Moon, Jupiter. 10th, you could say, well, ninth house energy, 9th, 10th. I mean, yeah, 9th in the first, you could say. South node Uranus, again and again, we see South node Uranus. And this is 5th house. Do not see Jupiter in Leo or connected to the 5th house. We see 5th Lord Venus in the first. Pluto in the 4th, in Taurus, in conjunct Moon, exact. But Moon exalts in Taurus. So that is a powerful in conjunct with, might cause difficulty with somebody who's less evolved. But somebody like Swami Vivekananda can surely make good use of this, partially because the signs Moon exalts in Taurus, so dignifying this Pluto, so making this Pluto goodly nature, but very powerful and deeply insightful, penetrating, and evolutionary, right? Moon, ascendant Lord. Some Mercury's 9th Lord, and that's again being dignified by Saturn, the ascendant Lord. Jupiter is the 12th Lord, also in the 9th, but 10th whole sign house. South node Uranus. Neptune's not really doing much. Saturn is very slow. Saturn, Venus, mutual reception. Plus 2 days. So this Saturn is very slow, very powerful. It's the ascendant Lord, dispositor of the Sun and Venus, in the 9th cusp, conjunct the Moon. Moon's ruling the 7th. So this Saturn, he's very much an authority, right? He's got the very strong ascendant, and then good dignity, exalted, plus virtually almost stationary, this Saturn, in conjunct the Moon. So very strict type. So he's very disciplined, very self-disciplined, right? And very fair and balanced. North node in Sag in the 11th, but moving to the 12th. So community and spirituality, philosophy. South node Uranus definitely has a very strong 5th Lord in the first. Spirituality. Alan Watts, another Westerner, American, in Capricorn. Again and again, Capricorn. I'd say more Capricorn than Pisces, but definitely still strong Pisces influence with spiritual people, but equally strong Capricorn. Like you just get a lot of spiritual leaders with heavy Capricorn elements, qualities. So Mars, Sun, and Mercury in Capricorn in the 1st house, in the 1st quadrant, 2nd whole sign house. Jupiter is the ascendant Lord. Jupiter is in Aquarius conjunct North node. So for being a teacher, right? In the 2nd house, 3rd whole sign house. So speaking, communicating. And then Uranus also here, Uranus and Aquarius, Uranus conjunct Jupiter. So a radical philosophy, speaking radical philosophy. Moon in Virgo, very analytical, very sharp, trine the sun. So again, we'll see this, either full moon or sun trine moon, sometimes sun sextile moon. All right. Neptune conjunct the 8th house cusp, so very in Cancer. So that was he's probably very, very psychic, much more psychic than he lets on. Saturn and Pluto in the 7th, with Saturn ruling the second, basically the second cusp, most of the second house sign house. So communication with others as an authority. Pluto is there. Some powerful, deep psychological communication. It's out of sign, but it's still conjunct. 8th Lord in the 9th. So mysticism, esotericism is going into philosophy. MC Lord Venus in Sagittarius in the 12th. So career, spiritual philosophy. South node Leo, north node Aquarius. So becoming very high-minded, very ideological, very brilliant, kind of genius. And Chiron in Pisces, opposite moon, no doubt. That's going to relate to spirituality, to being a spiritual teacher. 3rd Lord, nothing in the 5th house, but 5th Lord, 12th house, Sagittarius. Chiron, sextile, Mercury, Sun. So for teaching, that's strong. Saturn retro, Neptune, Pluto, Saturn, Mercury. Right. Saturn, Mercury. So 7th, 2nd. Yeah, we already talked about that. Speaking to others, communicating. That's what he was. He was a teacher. North node, Jupiter. Jupiter is the teacher. Chiron in the 3rd in Pisces. Right on. Paramahamsa Yogananda wrote Autobiography of a Yogi. He had that long, beautiful hair, right? Big belly, very gentle, feminine face. But he was a Virgo ascendant with Chiron. So Chiron, spiritual side of Chiron, teacher, healer, right in the ascendant. Mercury's ascendant Lord conjunct Venus. Ascendant Lord conjunct Venus. That's why. Mars, Mercury conjunct Venus is excellent. Beautiful. Beautiful expression. Beautiful person if it's conjunct the ascendant in Sag, philosophical. Capricorn, again, Capricorn sun. It bothers me because you have all these ridiculous stereotypes floating around in astrology. They're wrong. They're just wrong. They're dumb and they're stupid and they're wrong because people don't look at charts. They just read philosophy, like theory, astro theory, very stupid astro theory, and then they buy into it. Furthermore, astrology is made stupid by all the jokesters who just want to do the most stereotypical but wrong jokes, and then if you correct them, they'll be like, it's just a joke. Problem is, people believe these jokes. They tend to associate with these jokes. You have all these memes, and I get it. Jokes are jokes, but then people are like, oh, Capricorn's all materialistic, but I have Capricorn, but I feel spiritual. Like I'm supposed to be materialistic. No, you're just not reading real astrology is all, right? You're paying attention to the idiots who just post jokes and shouldn't even be it is what it is, I guess. Like you can't help it. Like I can't stop people from joking around and doing stupid stuff, but it's stupid. And it's bad astrology. So anyway, that's my little soapbox about that. There's more Capricorn suns than Pisces suns. Like, as a matter of fact, in these spiritual teachers. So there. And maybe that's because we know about them. Like I said, Capricorn's worldly, in order to get the message out. Maybe all the Pisces spiritual teachers are just hidden in their backyards talking to their parrots and their cats, right? Who knows? South Node Uranus again and again and again. South Node Uranus in Scorpio, no less. Huge indicator of somebody who's very spiritually evolved. The South Node Uranus. But don't get it twisted. This could be a politician as well. Henry Kissinger has South Node Uranus. This could be somebody who's just deeply traumatized. I've seen that. It was not very spiritually evolved. They're just deeply traumatized from their youth. Or it can be somebody who's brilliant, like Mozart. So it doesn't automatically mean, if you have South Node Uranus, that you are very spiritually enlightened, but it could be, because Uranus is the planet of enlightenment. So past enlightenment, or enlightenment that you have to relive, you know. Scorpio also, right? Okay. Venus, ninth lord, conjunct his ascendant lord, Mercury, in Sagittarius. Sun is the 12th lord in the 5th house, right? Spiritual teacher, spiritual leader. Square Saturn, and Saturn's exalted in the 2nd house. Saturn is dignifying. So 5th lord in the 2nd house for speaking, and 5th house for teaching, right? Saturn's dignifying the sun through a square. Sun is dignifying this Jupiter by exaltation. Sun's exalted in Aries, where Mars is also in Aries, so Mars is also dignifying this Jupiter. So this Jupiter is quite good in the 8th house. Even though it's not in domicile or exaltation, it gets good dignity from Sun and Mars. Gets a trine from Venus. Actually, it's dignifying Venus. Amazing. And Mercury, the ascendant lord and the 9th lord, from the 8th house. North node conjunct the 9th house cusp. MC lord Mercury conjunct Venus, 9th lord in the 4th. So teaching about spirituality at home. Pluto exactly conjunct Neptune, conjunct the MC. So a career that is Neptunian and Plutonian, very powerful, very spiritual, very mystical. Neptune and Pluto are both square the ascendant. Again, so that's strong. I don't know why the arrow gets big there when I do that, but it does. Moon's in Leo. Moon's ruling the 11th house of spiritual community. So Leo, fire signs definitely do have a relationship to spirituality. It's not just Sag. It's Leo, 5th house. And to some extent, Aries in 1st house. Right? Signs and houses are not the same, but they do correlate. So what else are we looking for? All right. What houses is Mars ruling? 3rd, Mars ruling the 3rd and the 8th. In the 8th. 8th lord in the 8th house. So esotericism, mysticism, occultism, secrets, hidden knowledge. Right? In the 8th house is the house where you can dig and find buried treasure. What that means is that you don't need a teacher if you have planets in the 8th house. You can do your own digging, get your metal detector, go dig a hole in the yard, you might find buried treasure. That's analogous to what I'm trying to say, that you can do your own research, you can do your own studying, and you can come up with your own secrets. Everyone in the modern world, because of modern indoctrination with colleges and schools, they want you to think that the only way to learn anything is to study with somebody who's more of an authority than you. That's wrong, especially if you have 8th house planets or strong 8th house, 8th lord. Because the 8th house is where you can discover hidden treasure. And that's where all these people who are writing books, if they have any originality to them at all, it's going to be coming from the 8th house or the 12th house, right? Because that's where you discover the hidden secrets of life. So, you know, he's learning a lot through his own research, his own study, even just meditation, going through a walk, contemplation, things like that. That's the value of the 8th house. And that's one of the reasons why, you know, It's not that I object to studying with an astrology teacher. I just haven't found the right one who I can who's not stupid. I'm just gonna be real with you. A lot of these astrologers, they know facts, they know, things, but there's a lot of them are stupid, like just dumb fucking idiots, and I won't study with them. Right. So, and plus I haven't reached the end of my own learning. Like I learned more by just doing my own thing than studying with these goddamn idiots. And I say that not because not because they're not smart in certain ways, but because I South Node Jupiter. They're missing the bigger picture. They really don't get it. Right. They're dumb in the big ways. So anyway. That is, I think that's everything. Yep, that's all of it. And this probably took long enough. So anyway, guys, I hope you learn quite a lot, because this was very revealing. I learned a lot too, because I study these charts before I make the video, but not like intensely. Like I do most of my studying while while I'm live. I know it's like, not supposed to be this way. I'm supposed to be like mastering everything behind the scenes and working really hard and just, putting up. Nah, because I have Sun conjunct Venus. I'm a little lazy, let's be honest, right? So I'm just gonna make my video and learn as I go. That's how I am. But anyway, fortunately I can do that. I can find the main things, right? And there's some amazing things. Chiron plays a role, South Node Uranus, South Node Neptune, South Node Pluto sometimes, South Node Moon, South Node Jupiter. We didn't see any South Node Jupiter, but I know you'll see that sometimes. If we had more charts, we would see that as well. And then, obviously 9th and 12th house, and then 5th house also, and then Capricorn, and then 8th house. These are all major players. Neptune, of course. Neptune, Pluto, Uranus, right? So all the obvious things, but a few less obvious things that really play strongly into these spiritual leaders. Sun Moon here, not in good aspect, but a lot of times the Sun Moon in really healthy relationship as well. Obviously, there are always going to be outliers, but you look for trends, not hard fast rule. There are no hard fast rule. You're not going to find like one thing that's always going to be the way it is, right? For something like this. In any case, guys, I hope you enjoyed this. That this was the Astrology of Spirituality, something which I love, something which a lot of you love, right? So like, subscribe, share, hit that like button, guys. Book a reading with me, macrogoldmachine@yahoo.com, and leave a comment down below. Let me know what you thought, and I will make another video soon. So, mediocre astrologer signing off. Meh, he's okay.